Well, this is Saturday, July the 24th. My joy to come to you with today's devotional. The title is Home, Sweet Home, a Family Portrait. Now, the scripture reading is Psalm 128, and I invite you, read the scriptures today. It's only a few verses long, and it will really help you to grasp an understanding of those things that we'll talk about in today's devotional. Now, this Psalm 128 is in the midst of Psalms that we are looking at that are all titled A Song of Degrees. This particular one is a psalm of rejoicing in the Lord's blessing. Now, as you would read the scriptures today, and I invite you to do so, you'll notice in Psalm 128 verses 1 and 2, the promise of happiness. Allow me to read the word to you. Psalm 128, verse 1. Blessed or happy is everyone that feareth, that reveres, that worships the Lord, that walketh in his way. For thou shalt eat the labor of thine hands, and happy shalt thou be, and it shall be well or pleasant with thee. You know, as I'm reading those two verses, I would ask you the question, is there any one of you who does not desire and long for happiness? You know, sadly, we live in a world that people look for happiness in all the wrong places. Some look for affirmation as a way to happiness, but trophies and medals and applause never gratify. Some think that climbing the ladder to success and pursuing wealth and acquiring possessions, that they might find happiness. But happiness is not found in any of those things either. And sadly, the happiness that the world promises is temporal, and it never satisfies. Now, Psalm 128 verse 1 and 2, we ask the question, to whom does the psalmist promise happiness? Well, the answer is to those who fear the Lord and walk in his ways. What are the ways of the Lord? His law, his commandments. Such a man will be happy and satisfied, and has the promise he will enjoy the fruit of his labor. You know, the man who loves and serves the Lord is physically blessed, first of all, through his seed. His wife in the verses that we find in verse 3 is compared to a fruitful vine. And in Scripture, vines symbolize a life-giving force. The psalm continues with how the blessing was given. We read in verse 5, The Lord shall bless thee out of Zion, the mountain upon which the temple was built. And thou shalt see the good of Jerusalem all the days of thy life. Now, the temple was a majestic symbol of God himself and God's presence among his people. It represented life and Israel's prosperity. Now, so far, we have observed two family portraits in our study of Psalm 128. The first was that of the man and his wife, who the wife is compared to be a fruitful vine, as she is under the shadow of her husband's love and piety, and she is a source of joy to her husband. Now, the second portrait was of the couple's children, and we find that they are round or sitting around the table. The children had not grown up to become wild weeds, but we're told that they were like olive plants, trained and cultivated. They were growing up in this man's home who fears the Lord. Those children were growing up to be a blessing. Now, the third family portrait is found in verses 5 and 6, and it is a picture of contentment. In fact, you'll notice in the last two verses that it concludes with what I would call a benediction. In Psalm 128, then, verse 1, the man that had feared the Lord was now old, as we come to verse 5 and 6, and he's stooped in age. His body is weak. His spirit, however, is strong, as he aspires to see God's blessing on his nation. Now, because the Lord is the rewarder of them who love and fear him, the old man was promised in verse 6, Yea, thou shalt see, look, and discern thy children's children, your grandchildren, and peace, shalom, prosperity upon Israel. I close with a thought. You know, there are some that are listening to, watching, and maybe reading this devotional who long for their family, to be a picture of happiness and joy. You long for the Lord to pour out His blessings on your marriage and to see your children's children, your grandchildren, living in a nation that enjoys shalom, the peace and the prosperity of the Lord. You know, those are admirable desires. However, they are promised only to them who fear the Lord and walk in His way. I challenge you today. If you want a home sweet home, fear the Lord, revere Him, worship Him, and follow in His way. God bless you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.